I got bit by a dog tonight and had to have stitches, and that's the second worst thing that happened to me tonight. The worst thing was watching the Arizona Diamondbacks lose to the Padres by a score of 5-0. Welcome into the PHNX D-Backs podcast. My name is Derek Monti, occasionally known as your mayor of PHNX. This man next to me is the mayor of Chase Field. I'm just naming him that now. He does more work around that place than a lot of people. It's the one and only Thunderstick, Jesse Friedman. And Jesse, this one was pathetic. This one was really, really bad. And I don't know what to say about this 5-0 loss. Obviously, the Diamondbacks in this one did not muster up much offense to save their season here. And they were almost no hit until I saved the day, remarkably enough, by tweeting out that the Diamondbacks had not been, or were getting no hit. And then all of a sudden Corbin gets a double, or single, whatever you got. But anyway, Jesse, what are your thoughts here from Chase Field on how this thing went down?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about it yesterday, right? Like, we knew that the Padres were not going to be full throttling today, and sure enough, they did not. They called up a pitcher from AAA to start this game. They did not start Luis Arraez. They didn't start Jackson Merrill. They did not start Fernando Tatis Jr. And what we were kind of talking about yesterday was the Diamondbacks just lost 2 out of 3 to the Rockies. They lost 2 out of 3 to the Giants. You know, the Padres B team is frankly a more formidable team than some of the teams that the Diamondbacks have been losing to recently. So it never felt, at least to me, like a sure thing that the D-backs were going to come in and take advantage of a Padres team that was, you know, obviously did not really have anything to play for. And I mean, Randy Vasquez, like what more do you say about this? I mean, this is a guy who had an ERA well over 5 coming into today. He has made 19 starts. He had 19 starts in the big leagues this year coming into today. And 2 of them were against the D-backs, Derek. And he was pretty darn good in both of those games. He pitched into the 7th inning in both of his starts against the D-backs earlier this season. He gave up 3 runs in one of those games, 2 runs in the other. I don't know what it is, but the Diamondbacks have a really hard time hitting Randy Vasquez, who's sort of been like an up and down guy by the numbers, you know, probably one of the worst starting pitchers in all of baseball. But to his credit, I thought that he threw well today. I don't think this was all on the Diamondbacks, but some of it definitely was, because for you to come in here and have the best offense in baseball and put up 2 hits in a game that you really had to have, it doesn't get a whole lot worse than what we saw here tonight.
And I honestly still just find it so fascinating that a team as a whole can go as cold as the Diamondbacks do at times when things are bad for them, right? We talked about it early in the season. You know, it was great that, you know, Gino and Corbin, you know, eventually came back online, but the way that this team struggled wasn't just one guy or 2 guys. It was the entire team. And tonight, everybody struggled. Nobody seemed to have very productive at bats. Nobody showed a real fire, as people in the chat have talked about over the last few nights. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what we saw tonight, because it was all set up there for the Diamondbacks to take advantage of a Padres team that was obviously not putting their best players out there. We've seen this actually out of the Diamondbacks before, where, you know, going back to that Blake Snell outing where they knocked him out of the 1st inning, and then all of a sudden were just absolutely embarrassed by the bullpen for the Giants. This is kind of a similar situation where it's a AAA pitcher getting called up, and a fantastic performance on his end. Cannot take anything away from the amazing performance, you know, that Vasquez had. But I mean, this team couldn't figure him out. This team couldn't figure much out. And honestly, even when it came to the decisions made, Jesse, it felt like everything that Torey did, like, didn't really go great when it came to like managing the bullpen there late. I know he was trying to pull some things where he was going for the win. He was literally pulling all the tools out of his toolbox, but it obviously, it felt like there were a couple of moments where maybe he was just pulling the trigger a bit early because he did not want to let any single pitcher, let anything get out of hand. And it was almost like he overplayed his hand just a little bit there late and ends up with the result that we ended up with in the 9th inning.
I mean, it's kind of hard for me to fault Torey Lovullo in a game like this. I mean, he obviously was,
especially for going to AJ Puck, right? Like
AJ
Puck.
I mean, the last thing that you can get mad at Torey Lovullo at this point for is bringing in a guy who's been the best reliever in all of baseball for the last 3+ months. So I can't really. I mean, he was aggressive today, right? Like, you don't normally pull Eduardo Rodriguez just because there's a couple base runners on in the 5th inning. I thought Erod pitched really pretty well today, and the bullpen behind him was quite good. Justin Martinez looked really good. Ryan Thompson looked good as well. Kevin Ginkel was able to help Erod work out of a jam and get Manny Machado in a big spot there in the 5th inning. But it's just one of those baseball phenomena where when you have a reliever who is on the kind of run that AJ Puck has been on, I think it was 22 2/3 scoreless innings in a row, something like that coming into today. At a certain point, you start to feel like, okay, this doesn't happen in baseball. Like, this is bound to kind of correct itself just by the nature of the game. And that's what we saw today, right? And it wasn't just AJ Puck,
it was
getting a little bit unlucky. It was AJ Puck throwing a couple of sliders, middle, and obviously
back-to-back home runs, Jesse. Back-to-back home runs.
Yeah, and I mean, this game was just like the Diamondbacks this season, as I said earlier, have the best offense in all of baseball in terms of how many runs they've scored. And AJ Puck has been the best reliever in all of baseball over the last couple of months. And the Diamondbacks lost this game because their offense was a complete no-show. And that reliever, who has been so good for them, just sort of inexplicably, gives up a single to a left-handed hitter and then a back-to-back home runs to a couple of hitters that, I think Higashioka's had a nice season. He's been a bit of a D-backs killer this year. But Brandon Lockridge is not exactly a household name at this point. So that just sort of encapsulated how bad
it was. His first home run. It was his first home run, Jesse.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't great. And I mean, I honestly know that there's a lot of other things. Like I think Bees said something here in the chat that I've kind of said, and just in regards to the majority of the comments about blaming it on Torey, blaming it or fire Torey, all that kind of stuff. And I do ask, at what point do the players who play the game take blame, right? And on a day like today, but I don't know. I don't know, because when it's a day like today where it's not just like, okay, they got, they hit into some double plays when they had runners on base. They got unlucky like we've seen them get. They maybe, screwed up kind of like they did in the first inning yesterday. This was none of those things. This was just batters absolutely, being held in check by a guy that is a AAA pitcher that's just getting called up, right? Like, this is one of those moments where you, like, I don't know what the answer is here. I honestly deep down inside want to say, like, when do the players take the blame? When was the point where we blame them for their performances? But when you have the entire team kind of go flat like this, there might be something more to the idea or the concept there, that this isn't just entirely on the players, and that preparation, game plan coming in, whatever, wasn't the best. Maybe whatever they did. I know that at times, especially during the times where this team has struggled, we've seen Torey try some different things. Like the other day, I think against, the Giants, they chose not to do, batting practice when you and I were there. And that was like something.
They didn't do batting practice today either, actually, which, again, you can ask that. Torey was asked that post game, and it's so hard for me to know, like, did the D-backs offense not show up because they didn't do batting practice? I don't know. Teams do that kind of thing all the time. It's just, I mean, this is just the epitome of it's baseball, right? Where you can't really explain what happened on a day like this because it doesn't really make any sense, but it's just kind of part of the sport where, sometimes the best offense in the league is going to get utterly shut down by a guy who's just called up from AAA and has an ERA of almost 6. Like that's the sport, right? That's just kind of the sport that we love. And yeah, for the Diamondbacks, it couldn't have looked a whole lot worse than it did today.
All right, Jesse. Well, what do you got post game from the clubhouse?
No, some people are asking about clinch scenarios. We'll definitely
we'll
here a little bit.
We'll address
later.
that before we get out of here for sure.
I have that all mapped out here. It is still possible for the Diamondbacks to make the postseason even tomorrow, which is wild to me. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get to some.
They want a time of death, Jesse. They want a TOD is what they want on this season. They want me to put on my doctor coat, the one that Johnny stole from me, and they want me to pronounce the Diamondbacks season dead. And as much as this is like a very terrible accident victim laying in front of us right now, we can't do that because this team inexplicably still has a pulse based on circumstance, and we will get to that here shortly. But I do know, again, you got some stuff from the clubhouse. So what do you got for us?
Yeah, we'll just start with AJ Puck, who obviously that's when things really started to really go south for the D-backs in this game. Not necessarily a whole lot to say when you throw a couple of sliders down the middle, but here's what AJ Puck had to say about those 2 homers there in the 9th inning.
They both hit sliders there. Just one of those things, they put some good swings on the ball. They're good hitters, and it wasn't my day today. You've been so good since you come over in the trade, even prior to that. Do you think that fatigue was an issue at all? No. I feel good. It's just one of those things. It's baseball. Things happen like that, and I'm looking forward to getting back out there tomorrow and trying to get that win so we can get to the playoffs. When you look at the way the spot the team is in right now, what's the focus? Just win the ball game. That's all that matters. And everyone here is confident that we can do it, and we got one more opportunity tomorrow to go out there and give it our all.
Any thoughts on Puck being used too much here down the stretch that led to this moment?
Yeah, hard to say. I don't think that his usage has been egregious necessarily. The D-backs, obviously, in the last couple of weeks, there have been some 3 out of 4 situations and whatnot, but it's tough. I mean, he did start out as a starter this season, which is, his innings count is a little bit higher than maybe it would be normally because of that, but it's not in any kind of an alarming range, I don't think, based on where it was a season ago. So it doesn't. Torey was asked that post game as well, and he didn't. Puck's still throwing 97 miles an hour. It just looks like location mistakes. Is it possible that maybe fatigue manifests itself more in location than in the velocity and the spin and whatnot? I think that is possible, but there isn't any super clear evidence for me for that right now. That's just, I think, kind of like the cop out that we go to when a reliever struggles at the end of the season,
For sure.
So yeah, really hard to answer that question, honestly.
Well, and I don't mean that like over the course of the season. I just mean like here lately, right? I really do feel like lately he's been kind of overused a bit. And but again, it's this time of the year, right? Like your best relievers, your best pitchers are going to get overused when it comes to the playoffs, and especially when you're trying to get into the playoffs in the final week. Just it doesn't feel like much has worked out for this team, no matter what direction they've gone, no matter what they've tried to do. Today was one of those days which we've criticized Torey in the past for leaving guys in far too long, leaving pitchers in far too long. And today was a day where he had a very, very quick trigger with everybody. He was pulling, guys and kind of utilizing his entire staff and really just trying to pull out all the stops to get the win. It just ended up being, ironically, his best reliever that was the one that let the dam break.
Yeah, and I guess we should get to the offense here. What happened on that side?
Oh
of the ball
yeah,
for the
yeah.
D-backs.
We're putting too much blame in this game on the pitching
Yeah,
staff because
it's tough,
two
you know,
hits, get out of here, get out of here.
even
I
if AJ
want
Puk
more than
puts
that.
up a 0 in the top of the ninth, is anyone like, oh yes, the Diamondbacks surely win this game in the bottom of the ninth or in
Correct.
extra innings? It didn't necessarily feel that way. Christian Walker was asked after the game if it, just kind of felt like the D-backs were one hit away. And there's a follow up to that in here as well. Here's what Walk had to say.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of games where it's you can't have trouble. You have trouble getting something going early, and then end up having an explosion late. But yeah, it was just one of those nights. Tough. They executed well. Got to tip your hat. It's frustrating to say, but there's two sides of it. Somebody else is doing their job when they're getting you out. So. Yeah, we had some opportunities, just couldn't execute when it mattered.
You think guys are pressing?
No, I mean not overly. I mean, everybody wants to win games. Everybody wants to, be the guy that puts us in a good situation and opens it up. But it doesn't feel like anybody's putting too much pressure on themselves. That's a really good team. They've been playing really well lately. I definitely want to be accountable, and I missed some opportunities to drive some pitches and drive in some runs tonight. But in the same sense, we're out there preparing the right way and prepared to execute, and just didn't go our way tonight.
It really didn't. And I mean, he is a guy that we've really been looking for as a big contributor to this offense. He has been all season long.
Yeah, Christian Walker is he hasn't looked the same since coming back from injury. We touched on this a little bit yesterday and probably in preceding shows as well. But the D-backs are just in a spot right now where no one in the middle of their lineup really is in peak form, at least as of this very moment. Even Ketel Marte, who hit a bazillion home runs in Milwaukee last weekend, this week you coming into today was 2 for 12. With a 583 OPS, and what is obviously a very important week for the Diamondbacks. Similar situations with Christian Walker and Jock Peterson, who have skids that go well beyond past just the last week, right? We talked the other day about how Jock, the last month or so, has really been about a league average hitter. Christian Walker, not what we're used to seeing again since coming off the IL. So yeah, it's tough when the middle of your lineup, when none of those guys are really clicking, and that's kind of where things stand right now. We do have another clip of Christian Walker. We'll stick with him. D-backs have now lost 5 out of 6 games this week, which is it has been brutal to say the least. And here's what Walker had to say about trying to bounce back from that and sort of his perspective on what's gone on here.
Mentally, for the Walker?
Yeah, we've played 161 games this year. It's not the first down stretch that we've had this year. We show up and prepare the same way. We do things right here. We have a good leadership group. We prepare the right way. Guys work hard. We're good at flushing, turning the page, moving on, and that's what we plan to do. Not take it with us. And tomorrow's a new day.
A lot of people have been wanting to see Alek Thomas in the lineup. We know that he struggled offensively as well this season and really hasn't had anything that would show you for him to be in there. But any thoughts on seeing Thomas potentially in the finale tomorrow?
Well, I think the Padres are starting a lefty in Martin Perez, so I kind of doubt that we're expecting. I would not expect to see Alek at least in the starting lineup, but
Gotcha.
Could he be inserted into the game later on? Maybe once the Padres go to a righty out of the bullpen. That wouldn't surprise me. I do think it's funny that people are maybe upset about Alek not playing, given that there were a lot of questions yesterday about why the D-backs pinch hit with Alek as opposed to pinch hitting with Josh Bell, which I think was a pretty fair question. Bell has certainly outperformed him this season. So I don't. The D-backs have much bigger problems right now than whether Alek Thomas is in the starting lineup.
You're not wrong about that. Someone in the chat was asking, where's Damon? I don't know if Damon made it out of Chase Field alive. I don't know what that means. I just I don't know. He's not answering text messages. I mean, this was something that I don't know if he was prepared to see live in person with his family in front of Damon's family. The Diamondbacks did this in front of Damon's family. The audacity in front of Dennis. I'm disgusted. I'm disgusted.
Yeah.
Jesse.
Yeah.
But what else we got from the clubhouse?
Yeah, we also have Eduardo Rodriguez talking about what was, again, I thought a really, really good outing. And also Torey's very quick hook, pulling Rodriguez. I think he had 63 pitches, something like that there in the 5th inning. Here's what Erod had to say.
I mean, I feel great today. I feel like today was one of the best days that I feel. All my stars, you know, and I was trying to pitch well, and I do my job to go out there and keep it to no run. So
Torey said you looked at him like he was crazy when he went out there. What was your reaction?
I mean, that's I would say that's what we have inside, you know, like the competitor side. He's like, I don't want to come out of the game, you know, but he take the decision, and I respect, you know. The moment it's just frustrated me because I want to keep going, but I respect it and I understand this. So.
Erod was actually having a good night. I know, like, he allowed a few runners to get on there, but he was pitching pretty well in this one.
That's a silver lining from today for sure. It's been a bit of a bumpy road for him. Obviously, that Rockies start was so great, and then his start after that was not so great. And then, yeah, he looked really, really good again in this game. And so regardless of what happens tomorrow or Monday or the rest of the season, I think you can go into 2025 knowing that Erod is, you know, someone that you're maybe still somewhat concerned about, right? I mean, the results have been very uneven, but stuff wise, it looks pretty similar to me. We saw a 95 in this game. We're not seeing the same kind of velo drop that we saw with Jordan Montgomery. So there's some encouraging signs there for sure. And that's a really big thing for the D-backs moving forward, right? This is a 4-year contract. This was just year 1. Obviously, it did not go the way that Erod or the Diamondbacks hoped that it would. But, you know, maybe Erod is able to bounce back in 2025 and stay healthy and be a productive arm for this team.
We got a couple of super chats. Thank you, Benjamin Hunley, for your super chat. Nicholas Gruder says, can we discuss how bad Christian Walker has been the last 2 seasons in the clutch? He disappeared the last couple of weeks and was lost last postseason. And yeah, I mean, I know that Christian Walker, again, like I'd said earlier, is a huge part of the offense, but there are a few guys, I think, that you kind of expect to step up in big moments. And for the most part, you know, you get that at times out of guys like Ketel and Corbin. But Christian Walker is a guy that just contributes so regularly that, you know, I mean, it's not to say he's not a big part of wins. It's just, I will agree. There's not a lot of memories I have of Seawalk stepping up when the game's on the line and hitting that go-ahead run. It doesn't mean it hasn't happened throughout his career. It just isn't, you know, very common. I also think that that's part of this team's blueprint a little bit, that it's kind of always someone else doing it. There's always someone doing it. It just feels like Christian Walker isn't a very regular participant in that, you know, down the stretch. I still think he's one of the best first basemen in the league. And I still think that if the Diamondbacks do end up losing him this offseason, it's going to sting. It's going to sting, but it's going to be interesting to see if that's the road they go. It's going to be interesting to see what they do to fill his shoes, which will not be easy to fill. But do you have anything else from the clubhouse, or was that all you had?
That's all the videos that we have. I will say a couple of things from Torey. First of all, Torey's assessment of the offense was that guys were trying to do too much. He felt that players were putting too much pressure on themselves to kind of be the hero. And we saw the results of that approach in this game, and it wasn't good. But you also heard Christian Walker, who was asked there in the video we played earlier, whether guys are pressing, and he didn't really seem to think that. He said, you know, guys, of course, everybody wants to be the person who comes up big and puts the team in a good spot. But yeah, again, these things are just so hard from the outside looking in, they're so hard to really assess, you know, how much the pressure is really getting to them, whether this was just the D-backs having an off night, the same as they would in June. Sure didn't feel like that. The feeling here is that the Diamondbacks in the biggest of moments that they tighten up a little bit. It felt similarly last year at this time when the D-backs had the Astros in town, and I think they scored like 3 total runs in their last 3 or 4 games of the season, something like that. It feels very similar to that to me. And again, it's hard to really know the balance between how much guys are pressing versus, how much the opposing pitcher is just executing really well, which I thought Randy Vasquez was good. But Torey, he definitely took the side of guys are trying to do too much. And I want them to go about this a little bit differently going into tomorrow.
Well, I mean, I feel like that's obvious. You're seeing guys try to hit 3 home runs at 1 at bat, and it's just not getting it done. And I mean, tonight was, again, probably some of the game planning around an unknown player that you really can't do much game planning for. A great performance from the Padres starting pitcher and a really poor performance overall from the offense. I mean, this is just a disaster, Jesse. It's a nightmare. The only silver lining here that we have is no matter how much the Diamondbacks continue to lose and try to give this away, the Mets also can't seem to win baseball games, and they are also trying to give the final wild card spot away. The Braves win today. They won yesterday. They're pretty much solidified their spot. I mean, I know that there's still something crazy that could happen on Monday if they have to play that doubleheader, but overall now it's funny how quickly we shift from being Mets fans to Braves fans and wanting the Mets to lose every single game, because that's the only way this team at this point can really, it feels like that they can get into the playoffs. I know you have more though on how they can still get in at this point.
Yeah, so there are, if I can find the page that I had this, there it is. So there are 4 ways that the Diamondbacks can make the postseason.
4?
Yeah, 4. And
that's impossible.
They can still clinch a postseason spot here at Chase Field tomorrow. But that would require the absolute best case scenario for the Diamondbacks to clinch a postseason spot here tomorrow and not have to worry about the doubleheader. They would have to win here today, and they would need both the New York Mets and the Atlanta Braves to lose their games on Sunday. So that is one.
But if that happens, the Diamondbacks clinch their spot.
They clinch their spot, and I guess they might still be watching on Monday to figure out who they're playing or whatnot. But yeah, the Monday games would just be the Braves and Mets duking it out, fighting for their lives at that point. So yeah, mathematically, that's the way that this works, which is, it feels crazy with how the Diamondbacks have played lately, but they do still have a legitimate shot here. The other options here all require this to go into Monday. D-backs would be relying on certain outcomes in that doubleheader. So one scenario is the Diamondbacks win their game here tomorrow, and then the Braves just lose out. Braves lose tomorrow to the Royals and then lose both games to the Mets on Monday. This one does not feel very likely to me, Derek, given the way that the Braves have played and also the way that the Mets have played. But it is theoretically possible, I suppose. So that's another option. The D-backs could also win tomorrow and then get in via the Mets. So win tomorrow and have the Mets lose 2 out of their next 3 games. So the Mets don't have to lose out. But if the Mets just lose 2 out of 3 and the D-backs win tomorrow, then the D-backs would clinch on Monday. And then the last scenario is that the Diamondbacks lose tomorrow. And believe it or not, Derek, there is a path for the Diamondbacks to make the postseason, getting swept in the San Diego Padres series. And the only way that can happen is if the New York Mets do not win another game the rest of the season. So if the Mets lose all 3 of their remaining games, the Diamondbacks at that point would make the postseason over them. I wrote an article about this morning. We've talked about it a little on the show. The Monday doubleheader is kind of rigged against them in any scenario, and it certainly would be there, right? This is a scenario where the Braves have nothing to play for on Monday, and the D-backs need the Braves to sweep both games. It doesn't seem likely. But as we've said a few times on this show, Derek, the Mets are the Mets. And if any team was going to do something like that, somehow it feels like it would be them. So yeah, the D-backs are not dead yet, but they are in a very, very difficult position. They need a whole lot of help as I'm described there in all those different scenarios.
We're giving people far too much hope. You're giving people far too much hope. And after they back their way into the playoffs like this, they're totally going all the way back to the World Series, Jesse. That's totally what's going to happen.
Yeah, I was talking about that with some people in the press box, like just remembering what it felt like last year when they clinched and how the vibes were so low at that point. They lost 4 out of 6. They lost 6 out of 9. it looked like they couldn't really score runs anymore. You know, Zach Gallen had been pretty hit or miss in the month of September. They were going to have Brandon Pfaadt start the first game of the postseason, which was not an ideal scenario just because they needed both Zach and Merrill to pitch in the final weekend. So the vibes were not good last year at this time, and the Diamondbacks were able to find their way into the World Series about a month later. So as far-fetched as that feels right now, Derek, I am reminded of what happened last year and know that just given the nature of this sport, anything can happen if you get into October. D-backs have a serious uphill battle to get there, but as we just outlined, it is not impossible.
Brother, that's something that I just can't really even I can't even sign off on these 4 scenarios allegedly that they could still get in with. So I don't know anything anymore. But you're right. Vibes were very low last year. They might be even lower tonight, Jesse. But I hope to those of you watching, we helped bring your vibes up just a little bit, and maybe, just maybe, Jesse filled you with a little bit of foolish optimism there at the end of this show, because who knows what can happen. And again, as long as this team has a pulse, they're still not dead. Guys should all listen to Bees. This guy is far more positive, and we need more Bees in the world, right? So there he says, allow the baseball gods to bless you with their magic once more. Beautiful, Bees. I appreciate you. I appreciate all of you guys for joining us. We thank you so much. Make sure, if you haven't done so already, you subscribe to the PHNX Sports YouTube channel. Hit that notifications button. Hit that like button before you get out of here. Of course, if you're listening on the audio podcasting side of this, make sure you sign up on whatever your favorite audio podcasting is. Subscribe, do all that stuff. Of course, leave us a review. We appreciate that. Most importantly, we appreciate you guys for being Diamondbacks fans. No matter how tomorrow goes, this is it. We got one more regular season game, at least for the D-backs. Jesse and I will be here again tomorrow with another post-game show after that one. So make sure to join us, win or lose, and we will talk about all the things that happened. And maybe just a little bit of fantasy football talk. I don't know. No promises there. But of course, make sure to follow us on Twitter. I am at @cap_caveman with a K. Jesse is at Jesse N. Friedman. Big shout out to Shane, our guy Shane Diefenbach, for producing tonight. He is at Shane Dief. That's DIEFF. Of course, our show is at PHNX_D-backs, but all roads do lead to at PHNX_sports on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We thank you guys so much again for your time, for being here to vent with us, and mostly for maybe still believing that this team can make the playoffs. We will see you tomorrow. And until then, have a nice night. Behave yourselves. And remember, kids, baseball is fun, but it's so much more fun when you just win a baseball game to clinch a playoff spot.
We all silly like the mayor.